My name's Adam Murray. I am one of the directors at Somerset Wildlife Trust. I'm involved with the work around our communications, engagement, and fundraising. And I'm here to host the event and sort of to run things from a tech side of things. I've also got Hannah Terry from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust helping monitor the chat as well. So thank you for that, Hannah. And Hannah will be talking about the campaigning side of things. And then we have the likes of Matthew Stanton from Bebout. For those of you that is, always get muddled up. Buckinghamshire, Matthew, help me.
Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust.
Thank you very much. I always get them in the wrong order. So absolutely, thank you, Matthew. And then we've also got Steve Muse from Somerset Wildlife Trust as well, who'll be talking about the advocacy side of things around how to engage your MPs. So that's who you've got with you tonight. We've also got Debbie Tan, who's the CEO from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, who will be around for the question and answer session at the end as well. So yeah, thanks Debbie for coming along as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Matthew, who's going to be talking through the policy side about the planning and infrastructure bill. So over to you, Matthew.
Thank you very much. The first thing I want to say is that at the Wildlife Trust, we always aim to be constructive with government. So we don't run campaigns like this lightly. We only do so when there's a really good reason. But this bill is a really good reason. So I'll just run through what the bill does, why we're concerned about it, and then Hannah will come on to sort of things that you can do to help. So what does the bill do? The bill is called the Planning and Infrastructure Bill for a reason. The purpose of it is essentially to speed up house building and big infrastructure projects. And there's nothing wrong with that. But let's not kid ourselves that because part 3 of the bill is called Development and Nature Recovery, the purpose of the bill is to restore nature. It isn't. Speeding up house building is fine as an objective, but the problem is the way that this bill aims to speed up house building is by making it easier for developers to destroy species and habitats in places where they want to build. And it does this, and I'm going to try not get too technical. It does this by essentially empowering Natural England, which is an arm's length government body who's in charge of protecting our nature in this country, empowering Natural England to make these things called environmental delivery plans. Now, these environmental delivery plans will cover a particular area and certain species and habitats within that area. So I'll create an example here. So let's say you have an environmental delivery plan for hazel dormice that covers Oxfordshire, let's say. So developers in Oxfordshire would no longer need to survey for hazel dormice in Oxfordshire and could just bulldoze their development site, oblivious to whether the species are present or not. In exchange for this freedom to kill species, they simply have to pay a levy to Natural England, who will use those funds to provide compensatory measures elsewhere. Now, the government says this presents a win-win for nature and development because it speeds up development by allowing developers to ignore protected species and habitats on site. And they say it's a win for nature because Natural England will offset such destruction elsewhere. Now, there are many, many problems with this approach, not in the least that you're essentially guaranteeing destruction of species on site for the sort of wishy-washy promise of an expected but not guaranteed compensatory program elsewhere. So that's one big problem. But our main, at least my main problem with this bill is that it turns the way planning approaches protecting nature on its head. Now, I said I'm not going to get too technical, but you'll see on the slide, there are 3 boxes where it says avoid, mitigate, compensate. If any of you work in planning, you'll know that is something that's called the mitigation hierarchy. And the mitigation hierarchy is something that developers need to follow. And it goes like this. First, when planning their development, currently, they need to avoid harm to habitats and species. I think we'd all agree, of course, that should be the first step. Secondly, where they can't avoid harm they need to minimise or mitigate that harm. And then finally, and only when they can't do the first two, do they go to the third stage of providing compensation for the harm done. Now, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill short circuits that mitigation hierarchy, skips straight past avoid, straight past mitigate, and goes straight to the final step of compensation. So it removes the need for developers to first avoid causing harm. Now, this means that developers don't even need to carry out surveys for the species covered by an environmental improvement plan. So they won't even know what they're killing on site. Now, when the bill was first published, we were horrified, and many of you supported our campaign against the bill. And the good news is that that campaigning did work. So a couple of weeks ago, the government came forward with a lot of amendments that do improve the bill. And they wouldn't have done that had you and thousands of others like you written to your MPs, written to your councillors, and put pressure on the government to make these changes. So I'll run through a couple of those improvements and then explain why it's not good enough. So one of the changes that's made is to something called the overall improvement test. Now, this is the test that the Secretary of State, but it's Secretary of State for Housing, not the environment, needs to apply before they approve one of these environmental delivery plans. And that's the plan to be followed to deliver the compensation for harm caused on site. So this test has been strengthened from likely to outweigh to material outweigh. So the Secretary of State needs to believe that this environmental delivery plan will materially outweigh the harm caused. That's good. It's an improvement. Next improvement the government's made is that Natural England now needs a plan for backup conservation measures in the event that their first conservation measure fails. Again, that's a good improvement. And also there's now an obligation on Natural England in their environmental delivery plans to give an indication of the sort of the sequencing of their conservation measures in relation to development. However, that doesn't deal with the problem that actually under the bill, the conservation measures to compensate for the harm caused on site might not be in place for around 10 years after the harm occurs. So that's not good enough. And another improvement as well is that the government brought forward an amendment that says the compensation should be delivered locally to the harm, ideally, although that can be overruled in circumstances. So all of these amendments are a step in the right direction, and they only came about because of the pressure you helped put on government. But they don't make the bill good. They only make it a little bit less bad. So I'll go through some of the really bad things that's still remaining. An example of one of the remaining problems concerns the polluter pays principle. Now, the polluter pays principle essentially says that the person polluting should pay to fix it. Now, when you consider development, that essentially means that developers, when they cause harm to nature, they should pay the full cost of remedying that harm. But under the bill, when Natural England decides what to charge developers for offsetting the harm developers cause, they need to take into account the economic viability of development. So essentially, if developers argue they can't afford to pay Natural England, there's a chance developers can destroy habitats and not even have to pay to put that right. Now, this is completely out of line with the polluter pays principle, in conflict with the Environment Act 2021, and undermines environmental principles. So it's absolutely wrong. Another big concern that you might have heard about is around irreplaceable habitats. Now, the government says this bill won't make it easier to destroy and build on irreplaceable habitats. They assure us it won't. But that isn't matched by the wording of the bill. The bill could make it easier to build on irreplaceable habitats such as ancient woodland. But in many ways, these sort of other problems are side issues, because the fundamental problem at the heart of this bill remains. And that is that it short circuits that mitigation hierarchy. It removes the requirement in EDP areas for developers to avoid harm to protected species and habitats. And these are our most protected, most precious species, our rarest habitats. Yet this piece of legislation makes it easier for them to be destroyed. Now, all the amendments that I spoke about go towards improving the likelihood that the conservation measures Natural England will manage will deliver what they're supposed to. But none of these amendments go to the fact that compensation is only needed because the bill makes it easier to kill wildlife and nature in the first place. Now, the Office for Environmental Protection, which is an environmental watchdog in this country, delivered a piece of advice to government, and they warned that unless that mitigation hierarchy I referred to was put on the face of the bill, the law could allow protected sites to be harmed in such a way as to affect its integrity, and even in extreme cases to destroy that site altogether. And the amendments don't put the mitigation hierarchy on the face of the bill, and until they do, the bill will remain environmentally aggressive. The purpose of this bill is to facilitate the destruction of nature, and that's why we will continue to oppose it. Now, that is a very short summary of our concerns about the bill. There are longer explanations of all that online that I'm sure we can share with you afterwards. But I hope that gives you a taste of why we're so concerned about this bill. And now I think, Adam, we're going to move on to how you can help us.
Thank you, Matthew. Hopefully that's given you a bit of the background about where we've come from and where we've got to at the moment. One of the key things that we've been talking about is one of those next steps, one of those specific next steps is then how to engage with your MPs. And we'll come back to one of the questions that's already in the chat around what flavour MPs you have in your patch. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to give you a bit of the lowdown on all things to do with engaging with your MPs over the summer and beyond. Over to you, Steve.
Great, thanks, Adam. So, and thank you, Matthew. It's a brilliant introduction to this pretty horrendous bill. So, contacting your MPs, we're going to talk about what you engage with them about exactly later on under the section that Hannah's going to talk about. So, what I'm going to talk about just briefly now is about what the best way to engage with an MP, especially at this time of year. So, summer, in fact, is a really good time of year to contact your MP. They're on a thing called recess. Parliament is full of these hideous phrases that no one in the real world understands. But basically, it's when the House of Commons and House of Lords is not sitting, is not in session. So basically, all the MPs are back in their constituencies. Some of them will take holiday, of course. They are allowed. But we tend to find in our experience that especially the good ones, the busy ones, especially the ones in a slightly marginal seat, tend to take quite short holidays and make the most of the summer recess to be out and about and meeting constituents. And as you can see from the slide here, some do summer village tours. This is two of our local MPs here in Somerset, Ashley Fox and Rachel Gilmore. So that's a good chance for us to see them out and about and to meet them, which is great. So this recess, this break in the House of Commons goes on till the 1st of September. And then they go back to Parliament for a funny little 2 weeks before they go off again for what's called conference season. So they're off now till the 1st of September. They're back in Parliament until the 16th of September, and then they're off again until the 13th of October. But of course, the party conferences only last 3-4 days, and the rest of that time as well, they are out and about in their constituency. So again, a good chance to collar them. So just a few pointers there on the slide before you go and meet your MP, who you might have done already, which is fantastic. Always a good idea to research them before you meet them. Find out their background, their job history, their interests, their experience. Be a little wary of how they vote websites, because MPs usually vote along party lines, and sometimes it can be a bit confusing if say you've got a Labour MP and an opposition party posts a motion or some debate and the Labour MP votes against it, that they kind of have to. It's a really odd system. But what's more important, I find, is just to really get under the skin of what they've done in the past, what their life history is, and so on. Have a look on their website, Facebook pages, and Instagrams and all the rest. Ideally, meet them in person if you can. It can be a little scary if you've not done it before. I completely understand that, but it's always better to really eye to eye and really get the measure of them. Go as a group, go as a small group, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you if you want. That's fantastic. But if you do go and see them in person, it's even more important to really prep what you want to say, and keep it short and concise. If you're meeting them at one of their surgeries, which is another fancy word where it's just basically when MP meets constituents at a sort of set time, then they've probably got a queue of people behind. And if you've got all your points that you want to say, a nice neat list, and get them out quick, plus this ask, that they will love you for it. They'll remember you for it. Their staff will love you for it. If you sit there and take up the whole hour with a good old full-on rant, they'll probably be less inclined to help. So this ask is really important. If it's very important that you say, look, what I would like you to do, please, Mr. or Mrs. MP, because they want to know how they can help generally, and so having that ask is really, really useful. Be concise, polite, and focused. They represent all of you, so even if it wasn't a party, if your MP isn't a party that you voted for, that shouldn't matter. They're there to support you. So focus on that, and focus on being polite, and it's really important. If you've gone to meet them and you haven't heard anything back after a month or so, it's worth a follow-up letter, just to sort of chase them up. That can always be useful. If you can't go to see them, or can't make a constituency surgery, then email or write to them. Letter, I've said there, is better. It's so rare now for an MP to get a letter. It's far less. It's much harder for them to lose something like that. When they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails a week, their team has to filter it all, get them all registered on their database, and all the rest of it. If they get a physical letter, that stands out. I used to work for an MP in the past, so I really appreciate. I mean, people appreciate that, and it'll sit in a proper inbox. It's like real old school, but it's more chance of getting noticed, which is always useful. If you do write to them or email, keep it short again, keep it concise, because the MPs and their staff, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters and emails to respond to all the time. So again, keeping it easy for them is more chance of getting a good response. Also contact your local councillors, whether you've got a county council or district councillors. They'll be dealing with a lot of these planning issues in the future. So it's important for them, as well as the MPs, to know what the strength of feeling is from their constituents. That's all from me, Adam. I'm looking forward to helping out with lots of questions at the end.
Great, thank you. We'll come on to one of the specific questions from people in a minute, Steve. But one of the things that kind of came into my mind is just that practically, how do you find out? And we can put this in our follow-up email. How do you even find out who your MP is and how to actually get hold of them? So the very sort of basics. If you've never ever done it before, you don't even know who your MP is. I guess that's a sort of hopefully a quick question you can answer at this point.
Yeah, sure. Various websites do that. Just literally, if you type "who is my MP" into Google, it'll come up with a little site. You put your postcode in, and you're away. That's become a lot easier in the past. Some have websites, some don't, which I find remarkable for the people that don't. But they'll almost always have a Facebook page. They'll also have their details on the parliamentary website as well. So if you tap in, once you know who your MP is, tap in their name into Google again, and you'll find the different sites that they're on. And sometimes it's as easy to go to the House of Commons website or what have you, and you'll have all the information you need.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Steve. That's one of the, because it's you might think that because they're not at Westminster, they're off on a nice 8-week holiday or something like that. But it's actually, I think, good for everybody to know that they are out there, and this is actually now the time to be contacting them at a local level. What we're going to do now is hand over to Hannah. And Hannah's going to be giving us the lowdown on kind of next step. So instead of just individual action yourselves, how you can take it to the next level. So over to you, Hannah.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to talk very briefly about some opportunities that we might have to try and get noticed in the next few weeks and months, and make sure that our MPs and other influential kind of players aren't allowed to forget about the issue. I think with the summer holidays and the recess that Steve was talking about, the government in particular might have been trying to put some uncomfortable climb downs behind them and start the new term with a fresh record sheet. But we want to make sure that when MPs get back to work after the holidays, they're fired up to fight for nature, or at the very least, they're aware that this isn't going to be an issue that their constituents will give them an easy pass on. And I just want to re-stress, as Matt said earlier, that thank you to everyone who's already taken action, because without the pressure, without us making noise about this issue, the amendments that we have on the table at the moment would not be there. Government was very keen to push this through quickly and get on with it. And it's only because we've made it uncomfortable to do that, and we've made it impossible to do that, that we have seen the improvements coming through. But as Matt also said, it hasn't gone far enough, so we can't take the pressure off. Steve's spoken about how you can reach out to your MPs over the summer months. We would love to work with you and support you to come together in early autumn, so in September, to make some collective noise about this issue. Some of you might be aware that in early July, so just over a month ago, more than 5,000 people came together in Westminster to speak to their MPs. I think there were about 200 MPs that were lobbied in one day. This was organised by the Climate Coalition as a mass lobby of Parliament. They've done it before. It's a really effective way of kind of bringing people together around a shared issue and making it high on the agenda and get noticed. And building on that momentum, the Climate Coalition are now suggesting that they move to local lobbies, so that these would take place in constituencies across the country in the week between the 13th and the 20th of September. So it is that odd period that straddles the kind of end of summer recess and the party conference season. And it fits really brilliantly, when we saw this coming, it fits really brilliantly with things that we've been talking about anyway, about the need to get people together, to get out to the sites that mean so much to people in their local areas, and to be able to kind of show how much people care about those sites. So we'd love to take part in this week-long lobby, really bring the issues about the planning and infrastructure bill and nature to the fore. You can, if we go to the next slide, thanks, Adam. You can go on the Climate Coalition's website and have a look at more detail about the mass lobby. They essentially had three themes, or have three themes that they're focusing on. So you can see that it's finance, fairness, and that looks a bit fuzzy, restoration and resilience, I think it says, which very much that third theme is where the kind of nature restoration and our issues fit. But you'll also see that there's an element under finance that talks about making polluter pays. So that's very relevant to this discussion tonight. But really, we can use that opportunity to say what we want to MPs. We're thinking that it would be great to help coordinate activity with wildlife trusts across the country, with supporters and with wider communities and groups up and down the country. Perhaps we could identify some of the key nature sites that would be put at risk, and we could gather there. It would be brilliant to see this happening in, different areas of the country over the week. We did something similar when Liz Truss and her merry band launched the Attack of Nature in 2022. Gosh, already 3 years ago. Could you go on to the next slide, Adam? Thank you. So as part of that, our response to the attack on nature at that time, we very quickly organised with communities in the north of Hampshire a get together on one of the sites that we manage, which was in the constituency of Ranil Jawadina, who was the Environment Secretary at the time, very briefly. And we wanted to come together and make sure that he was really aware that this was an issue that his voters cared about, and it wasn't just organisations like the Wildlife Trust and RSPB getting annoyed about it, but it was actual people in his constituency, voters and potential voters that really cared. It was possibly the most polite protest that I've ever seen, or you could possibly imagine. We had bunting, we had tea, we had cake. Unfortunately, Ranil didn't take up the invitation to come and join us. So in the end, we walked to his office and we gave his team the artwork that people had created there and then, which was, beautiful windows that people had filled in with their fears for the future, but also their hopes for the future. So a really positive vision about wanting to have nature at the heart of their future for the area. We got lots of media attention for that event, although it was quite small, quite low key. We had coverage on most of the broadcast media, news programs, and also coverage in lots of papers, Evening Standard, Daily Mail, etc. It was thanks in part to the support of Chris Packham, who will, obviously help get media attention. But I don't think it was just that. It was the fact that people were really showing in, some of the most kind of rural, least protesty kind of environments that you could imagine, that they cared enough to get off their couch and to come together and make some noise. And I think we could, use that model and see it really successfully work for this issue. We also, if you go to the next slide, thanks. We also got children and schools involved in that particular event, and we've done so with other campaigns really successfully. So with the Attack on Nature event in North Hampshire, we asked children in the local schools to draw in the similar windows about what they wanted the future to look like. We know that children's voices are really powerful and that MPs will really listen and take note, voices of children and young people. And we know that young people really care about the wildlife and nature on their doorstep. So it would be great if we are organising these events, if we could find ways to make them as welcoming and inclusive of everyone, including young people, and really make them events that people can come and get involved in and have fun in, but also show that they care. So if we can go to my final slide, just thinking about that, apparently bulldozer bouncy castles do actually exist. So maybe we could make an event that is really very family friendly and make it very visually effective. We want to be able to help, but we don't by any chance, by any way want to do all of this. We would love for people to take this idea and run with it. But we are really happy to provide basic resources. So we've seen in the chat, I've seen people asking for kind of Q&As and key messages and stuff. We can absolutely provide that. How to invite your MPs. We will be going out to MPs to make sure that they're aware that this is coming up in September and to mark it in their diary. So when you get in touch, they'll be able to come back to you and say, oh yes, yeah, I'm definitely keen to do that. I've got this date available. We can give you notes on the bill. We can give you advice on how to engage with the media and social media, and we're really keen to be part of those events as much as we can be, and maybe find some of the sites that the wildlife trusts manage or own could be really good places to gather. We could even create some of these like fake planning notices that WC Link, the kind of idea that Wildlife and Countryside Link used as part of this campaign. But we could, play with that idea. But most of all, we really want you to unleash your creativity and encourage other people to do the same. Let's get together, let's come up with some great ideas. You've probably got better ideas than we have. But really, the key thing is that we put that palpable pressure on MPs so that they stand up and make some noise in Parliament when the bill comes back into the Commons. and that government takes it seriously and makes the necessary changes that we know that we need to this bill. I think we're all optimistic that we can secure the protections for nature that hang in the balance, but we do really, really need everybody to kind of come behind this at this point. So just to finish up, I'll just say that after this event, we will send out an email to everyone that's come tonight and everybody that registered to attend. And we will, follow up with some further information, keep in touch, and hopefully give you a way of letting us know if you're interested in getting involved with the week-long local lobby. And let us know if you have any other ideas now or in the chat or afterwards about how we can creatively campaign together. Thank you very much.
Love it. There's a very quick question that we can actually speak to straight away from Valerie, which is the Lobby Week a national campaign in England or limited to the three trusts and the wider counties that covered off here today? It is absolutely a national opportunity. So we're lucky enough to have wildlife trusts pretty much everywhere where everyone lives. So if it's not from our good selves and you're from a different county, then absolutely contact your local wildlife trust and see if they can support. But likewise, the reason why we've come together as sort of three trusts here is so that we can actually get greater bang for our buck and create resources that we can use across multiple counties as well. So absolutely, and that's great. Thank you, Hannah. So I guess we're going to move on to now the question and answers session. So is it all right, Hannah, if I hand back to you? So we've been gathering a bunch of questions ready to go through. So Hannah, are you happy to go through those lists and point them in people's relevant directions? That'd be great.
Absolutely. I've got the first few. I might have to have a look at what else has come in while I've been chatting. But the first one that I noted was somebody asking about Liberal Democrats. So with over 70 Lib Dem MPs, how can we encourage them to take more of a forthright stance? Steve, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, of course. That's a really good question. Thank you for that. They have been very supportive of what we've been trying to do. I think someone else in the chat mentioned about Gideon Amos, a Taunton Lib Dem MP who tabled all the amendments, which was amazing. We also work really closely with Elliot Chapman-Jones, who used to work for the Wildlife Trust, our national organisation. He now runs the Lib Dems environmental group, and we're in close contact with him. So they've been very supportive, and it would be good. I mean, mental note for myself to probably email Elliot in the morning to see if we can make something a bit more, a bit louder about their support for our cancelling of the Part 3 of the bill, because they do have a bigger voice, as the questioner says. 70 MPs is most they've ever had. So but a really good question. Thanks for that.
Sorry, while you're talking about Lib Dems, there was another question that came in around my MP was on the House of Commons committee that scrutinised the bill. Just take amendments, but outvoted by a Labour majority. What more can be done?
Yeah, so the Lib Dems are, so that might be Ollie Glover that the person's referring to, possibly. Also work with him. And also we've the all-party parliamentary group on local nature recovery is chaired by Pippa Halings, who's a Lib Dem MP over in Cambridgeshire. And we've briefed her as well and the members of that committee. And they're doing a lot of work trying to influence in the House of Lords as well. So pulling together peers from all of the parties who have concerns about this bill. So it's very important to keep it at the top of those Lib Dem MPs' agendas as well, because we know there's a core of them who are really passionate about this. But the more you can show that support, the more they'll feel emboldened to go out there. And also just talking about the House of Lords as well. If you happen to know any members of the House of Lords, have a word with them as well, because it is going through the ping pong stage now. So the bill next is in the House of Lords. Well, they will hopefully be passing amendments to improve it, hopefully addressing the points about the mitigation hierarchy that we mentioned. So the more noise we can make whilst in the House of Lords can only be a positive thing as well. And by highlighting it with your Lib Dem MPs now, that will also hopefully cause them to build more alliances with members of the House of Lords and try and push through some amendments that will put the government in a difficult position.
Thank you, Matt. Could you also come back on the question that came in earlier around just clarifying ecological surveys will no longer be required?
Yes. So where there is an environmental delivery plan covering a certain area, that will be specific to certain species and habitats. So let's say, I'll use my dormice example again. Let's say the environmental delivery plan for a certain area covers hazel dormice or Bechstein's bat, something like that. Essentially, the developer will be granted a license to say they've complied with species protection legislation for those species. They haven't got a survey for them. They don't take account of them. By paying that levy to Natural England, Natural England will do some work elsewhere. And all this is based on data that environmental record centres have across the country that is out of date, a lot of it not updated for decades. So yeah, essentially they won't know exactly whether those species are on site or not. So they could be bulldozing those species. They won't know because there's no obligation on them to survey those species covered by that environmental delivery plan.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Just looking for other questions that have come in.
There was one question, Hannah, if it helps you to, while you're searching through. Someone asked about Dan Norris MP and how to contact him. He's an MP up in the North Somerset Baines area, who does not have the whip at the moment. He was a Labour MP, but he's currently an independent through various issues that are going on with him. But he's still an MP, so you should be able to. His staff are still working, and they should be able to help. So you still can contact an MP who has the whip removed in that situation. It's a little harder, and you won't be able to get to meet him in person properly, but you can still lobby him. You are still represented. So hope that helps.
Brilliant. Thank you. And then the other one, which is a really good and important question, is when we say to MPs, what we want you to do is, what can we actually ask them to do? What is it that we should be suggesting to MPs that they should do?
Shall I take that one as well? So to keep it really simple, so everyone is saying the exact same message. I know I went through lots of amendments and issues with before, and lots of little things we can do to improve and make it less bad. But essentially, go to your MP and say, scrap part 3 of the bill, because that is the part of the bill that allows developers to go straight to destroying habitats, removes the need for them to avoid causing that harm. Those of us who have read every single page of the bill and all hundreds of pages of guidance and everything, when we have our discussions, we might say, scrap part 3 of the bill. If you don't do that, there's these other things that can improve it. For you, super clear message, scrap part 3.
Fantastic. Thank you. That is loud and clear. And then I think the only other question that I can see, but other people might be able to see others, is how will we know when and where an environmental delivery plan is granted? Matthew, do you want to take that one as well?
Do you want me to take that one as well?
Yeah, thank you.
So Natural England are preparing their first ones at the moment, even though it's not yet law. There is a consultation process that they need to go through, but that really isn't a public consultation. So we're going to have to keep our eyes out for it. But I can guarantee you, when those first environmental delivery plans are put out for consultation on some dark and gloomy government website, we will be shouting about it. And if you are happy to let us do so, we will write to you all with any issues we have with them. But one of the major concerns is actually that the consultation process for these EDPs is very limited. So it's not the sort of thing where there's like a local plan or something where everyone can feed in. So you might, if you don't follow the inner workings of DEFRA, National England, and Ministry of Housing, Community Local Government, you might not well know when these EDPs are put in place, but we'll certainly do our best to make everyone aware of it. There is another question, well, I'll just answer super quickly. This bill applies to England, not the rest of the nations.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions, but there are some other. Oh, there's another one that's just come in. What is the status of the obligation to restore nature 30% by 2030?
Me again. So that is a target that's in legislation. I think essentially everyone knows that 30 by 30 is not going to be met now. I don't think it will do anyway. Obviously, as Wildlife Trust, we're doing everything we can to increase that percentage as much as possible. But we think that actually a bill like this, which makes it easier to destroy habitats when compensation might not be in place for 10 years, would take us further away from achieving 30 by 30. And if I can just address one other question quickly that I think came in, is about the myth that nature blocks development. We've heard Keir Starmer say it a lot, we've heard Rachel Reeves say it a lot, blaming bats and newts, etc. So the Wildlife Trust, we got some independent research done, which found that I think it was only 3% of planning appeals involve or are delayed by bats and newts. And that is planning appeals, not planning applications. So it's way less than 1% when you look at planning applications as a whole. So there's a complete myth that nature is a blocker to development and growth. From our perspective, one of the big issues is essentially that local authorities are massively under-resourced, straining at the seams. There's not enough planning officers. There's not enough local authority ecologists. And that's from my own experience in working with them. Other arguments for what the actual problems are skills shortage, skills gaps, etc. I'm not going to talk about those because that's not my area of expertise. I don't work in the construction industry. But there are lots more blockers to development at the moment than nature.
Do you want to keep on a roll, Matthew? There's also a question about the Office for Environmental Protection's position on the amendments. So
the Office for Environmental Protection, when the bill was first published, came out with a pretty scathing review saying essentially does amount to environmental regression. When the amendments were published, they welcomed the amendments, welcomed the spirit of the amendments, but still came back to the point that the mitigation hierarchy, that issue still stands. Unless the mitigation hierarchy is on the face of the bill amounts to a regression in our standards of environmental law. And that position from the OP has not changed. So they still see this as being a regression if that change is made.
thank you. And I think just to finish off, there have been a couple of questions about badgers and the status in the bill. So would they need to amend the there's more Protection of Badgers Act to allow killing of badgers for developments, as I don't think there is an exclusion currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bill, on its face of it, actually specifically talks about the Protection of Badger Act. The bill here in front of me specifically talks about it, and again, it essentially says that where an environmental delivery plan covers an area, and that environmental delivery plan applies to badgers, the developers are granted a de facto license to say they have complied with the Protection of Badger Act. If the government want to pursue this approach to creating a win-win, which is not at the moment, one of the easiest things for them to do would be to completely remove species from the bill. So when you're talking to MPs, stick with the scrap part 3, because that's the easiest thing to say. But a fallback from them could be they just need to remove species from this bill, because for things like nutrient neutrality, diffuse pollution, things like that, in some ways it does make sense to deal with those at more of a landscape scale. But for species, that are dedicated to a particular site, the idea that you can kill them on one site, create habitat elsewhere, and expect that that is adequate compensation, even forgetting about the specific animal welfare and the ethics of killing species, it's just complete fallacy. But if they remove species from part 3, then at least we're dealing with that problem. And they could always keep it for things like diffuse pollution, air quality, things like that. Because it does in some respects make sense there, but it makes no sense to offer species. That might have been a rant/ramble, but I hope in there somewhere was the answer to the question.
Thanks, so Steve. Do you want to come in? Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. I found my hand, so I thought I'd raise it. Just to come in on a question from Joe as well in the chat there, Hannah, which was really good about the existing planning system. And you're absolutely right, Joe, that there are many issues with the current system that need improving, need more resource for planning authorities, more resource for proper data and all the rest of it. The scary thing is that we feel this legislation is actually going to make the situation worse, which is why we're campaigning so hard on it. So you're quite right. There are existing issues, but yeah, this is a scary step. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in on any other comments or questions that they've seen that I've missed? I've seen the request for as much info as possible via the lobby week. It is still early days in the Climate Coalition's planning for this. So they will be sending out more information. We will obviously send out an email after this event, and we will try and keep people updated and involved as we make plans. And we really, we're keen to, as I said, hear from you about any ideas that you might have. But it is very early days at the moment in the plans.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hannah, for fielding those. So I think we've just got a few minutes to wrap up. So thank you very much to all of our speakers for particularly their areas of expertise. It's been really useful and it's been really lovely working across our trusts with that range of expertise. So yeah, a big thank you to the speakers. It's just a sort of reminder, really, to sort of finish up that this is as somebody quite rightly put in the chat as well. This is about the importance of coming together and shouting loudly so that people hear, and we are louder when we shout together. So please do share this with your nearest, dearest, your communities, both where you live and or online, wherever that may be. This is where that noise starts to be heard. And we already know, as been mentioned a few times, that the noise we have made over the last months since March is making a difference. We just need to take it to the next level as well. So do keep that in mind. Speak up, speak loudly, speak now. We will be in touch with an opportunity for you to offer up your creative ideas as well, like Hannah said. And just remember, if there's 3 things you take away from today, it's first of all, contact your MP. Thanks to Steve has given you the ideas around how you go about doing that over the coming weeks and months. Join us at your local lobby week, whatever that may then look like, based on your creative ideas as well. And importantly, yes, we will follow up to everybody who's registered for this evening, but do also sort of sign up to your local trust, their e-newsletter, because that's a lot of the places that you'll find some of this information coming back to you as well. So I think that's it for this evening. A big thank you for everyone for your time. We will be in touch. Have a great evening, and we will hopefully see you soon. Thanks very much, everyone.